Have you ever stopped to think about what really keeps a country's economy humming? Is it always the big factories or, government plans? What if I told you that for Mexico, right next door, a huge part of its economic strength actually comes from something much more personal, money sent home across borders? For you today, we're doing a deep dive into Mexico's economy right now. We've got this really interesting pile of sources, articles, research, even some personal notes, and they paint a pretty vivid picture.
Yeah, and our goal here is to unpack something specific but really crucial: remittances. We want to look at what they actually are, why they've become such a massive financial force for Mexico, and how they're shaping the future. We'll break down any tricky economic stuff, make it really clear. You might genuinely be surprised by how big a deal this one source of income is.
Okay, sounds good. Let's unpack this then. We're aiming to give you a clear shortcut to understanding Mexico's economy, specifically looking at the huge impact of money sent home from Mexicans working abroad. So let's start with a quick snapshot. Mexico's economy heading into 2025. We often hear about GDP, right? Gross domestic product. For anyone needing a quick refresher, think of GDP as basically a country's total score for everything it makes and all the services it provides in a year. Simple as that.
Exactly. And what's fascinating for Mexico is that its GDP is projected to be over $1.5 trillion US dollars. It's a huge number, comparable to countries like Spain or Australia. And it's growing steadily, maybe around 2.3 to 2.8%.
Yeah.
Now, if we connect that to the bigger picture, what's driving this, a lot of it is manufacturing, exports, this trend called nearshoring.
Ah, yeah, nearshoring. That's
Yeah.
companies moving their factories closer to where they sell things, like the U.S., right?
Precisely. Cuts down on transport time, costs, all that. And the other massive piece driving growth: remittances. We'll definitely circle back to that.
Okay, so lots of making stuff, selling stuff, companies setting up shop closer. What else stands out in their economic health check?
Well, unemployment looks pretty low on paper, hovering around, say, 3.1 to 3.5%. That sounds good. But there's a nuance here, our sources point out. A really big chunk of jobs, maybe 55, even 60%, are in the informal sector.
Informal sector. So like jobs that aren't officially registered, street vendors, maybe small family businesses, that kind of thing.
Exactly. So while unemployment numbers look low,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of work happens outside the sort of standard tax system. Something to keep in mind. Then there's inflation, how fast prices go up. It's around 4.2%, which is actually coming down, but the central bank's keeping interest rates pretty high at 10.5% to control it. That makes borrowing money more expensive.
Gotcha. And the exchange rate, the peso versus the dollar.
Relatively stable, actually, around 17 to 18 pesos per dollar.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that stability, again, those strong remittance flows coming in, plus good export earnings.
Right, makes sense. And speaking of exports, it gets really interesting when you look at who Mexico trades with. It's overwhelmingly the USA, isn't it?
Oh, by far. They send huge amounts of vehicles, electronics, machinery north, things we use every day. And foreign investment, money coming in from companies abroad. That's strong, too, especially, again, because of nearshoring. Lots of investment into manufacturing, logistics, building those closer supply chains.
Okay, so that sets the scene. But let's zoom in on the star of this deep dive, as you called it. Remittances. We know they're important, but what exactly are they and why are they such a lifeline for Mexico?
Good question. Simply put, remittances are just the money that people who are living and working in another country send back home, to their families, usually. In Mexico's case, this overwhelmingly means money sent from Mexicans working in the United States. It's a direct link, person to person, family to family, across the border.
Okay, simple definition. But what does this actually mean for Mexico's finances as a whole country? Is it just helping families, or does it add up to something bigger?
Oh, it adds up. Big time. This is where the numbers just jump out at you. Our sources, CSIS, the Dallas Fed, Wilson Center, they all point to this. Remittances make up about 4.5% of Mexico's entire GDP.
4.5%. Wait, that might not sound like a huge number on its own, but didn't you say GDP was over $1.5 trillion?
Exactly. You do the math on 4.5% of 1.5 trillion.
Yeah.
It's enormous. And that percentage has grown significantly. Back in 2013, it was maybe 2%. By 2023, closer to 4.2%, holding steady around 4.5% since 2022. It's a massive upward trend.
So, okay, translate that percentage into actual dollars. How much money are we talking about flowing into Mexico each year?
We're talking absolutely staggering amounts.
Yeah.
That 4.5%, it translates to somewhere between 60 and 70 billion US dollars per year. The specific numbers we have are around 59 billion in 2022. Then it climbed to about 63.3 billion in 2023, and the estimate for 2024. Around $64.7 billion.
Almost $65 billion. Wow, that's more than just significant. It's kind of mind-blowing when you compare it to other income sources.
That's the key point. Our sources really hammer this home. Remittances now bring in more foreign currency for Mexico than their oil exports.
More than oil. Seriously.
More than oil, more than the entire tourism industry, and more than most categories of manufactured exports.
That's incredible. For a country we often associate with oil or tourism, the biggest single source of foreign cash is actually money sent home by its citizens abroad.
It's a fundamental shift.
Yeah.
And it's crucial. Remittances are, without exaggeration, Mexico's largest single source of foreign income. Think about what that means. It's a direct financial lifeline for literally millions of families. Money for food, for school, for housing, basic needs met. But beyond the family level, it also props up the whole economy. It supports the value of the peso, helps balance the country's international payments. It's become a cornerstone of Mexico's macroeconomic stability, a quiet superpower almost.
So with that much money flowing, billions and billions, it makes sense that people are thinking about the future, right? About how to manage it, maybe even leverage it. Our sources mention some innovative ideas.
They do. It's not just about sending cash anymore. There's talk about embedding remittance products into other things. Like one idea mentioned is linking it with mom and poppy products to search and launch services, both the U.S. and Mexico.
Okay. So maybe making it easier for small businesses on both sides of the border to connect, possibly using the remittance channel somehow. Integrating sending money with doing business.
Potentially, yeah. It suggests a future where sending money isn't a separate task, but maybe part of a bigger digital ecosystem for small businesses or families, streamlining things.
And then things get really interesting technologically and financially. There's talk of combining these remittance ideas with something called ADRs. Now, what are ADRs and why do the sources call this a huge event?
Right, ADRs. That stands for American Depository Receipts. Basically, they're like certificates that let people in the U.S. buy shares of foreign companies easily, right, on U.S. stock exchanges like the NYSE or NASDAQ.
So instead of navigating the Mexican stock market, a U.S. investor could just buy an ADR representing shares in a Mexican company.
Exactly. It makes it much simpler. Now imagine connecting that to remittances. The idea seems to be creating a way for Mexican companies, especially public ones, or maybe even those getting ready to go public, pre-IPO, to raise money from global investors. And maybe they could even get financing by somehow tapping into or facilitating those remittance flows or offering benefits to users of certain remittance platforms.
So it's like creating a loop. Money flows in as remittances, and that somehow helps Mexican companies attract investment back out from the U.S. via ADRs. That does sound potentially huge, linking families directly to corporate finance.
It could be a very powerful incentive for Mexican companies to engage with these new financial platforms and the whole remittance ecosystem.
Right.
It's about connecting the dots between individual needs and larger scale investment. That's why it's flagged as potentially transformative.
And underpinning all this future potential, there's mention of digital infrastructure, even a specific patent.
Yes. The sources emphasize the importance of building efficient digital remittance rails. Think of them like digital highways for money. And they mention seeking an exclusive deal with the owner of a specific digital finance patent. This points towards creating potentially proprietary, super efficient, low-cost digital systems to handle these massive flows.
So faster, cheaper, maybe more secure ways to send money, possibly controlled by whoever owns that key patent, making the whole process seamless and potentially unlocking new financial services on top of it.
Precisely. It's about leveraging technology to make this already vital flow of money work even better, faster, and perhaps open up new opportunities for financial inclusion or investment tied to these transfers. The future seems very digital.
Okay, so let's recap this journey. We've looked at Mexico's broader economy growing, dealing with inflation, the importance of trade with the U.S., that nearshoring trend. But the real eye-opener has been the absolutely central role of remittances. That money sent home by Mexicans abroad, it's not just helping families, it's propping up the entire national economy.
Yeah, we saw it's their single biggest source of foreign income, bigger than oil or tourism.
Yeah.
It stabilizes the peso, supports millions of households directly. It's just fundamental. And looking ahead, it's not static. There are these really interesting ideas bubbling up, integrating remittances into digital business tools, linking them to international investment through things like ADRs.
Right, and building those super efficient digital rails, potentially based on new patents to handle it all. It's moving way beyond just sending cash.
Absolutely. It connects families, yes, but it's also about global finance, technology, and national economic strategy now.
So for you listening, what's the big takeaway here? I guess next time you hear about a country's economy, maybe think beyond the usual headlines about factories or trade deals. Ask yourself, what are the hidden lifelines? What are those flows, like remittances from Mexico, that might be quietly keeping things afloat or even driving growth for millions of people?
It really does make you think about how interconnected we all are, doesn't it? How individual actions, like sending money home to family, can add up to have such a massive impact on a whole country's fortunes.
A powerful thought to end on. It definitely changes how you look at global economics.